Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching the Salty Sea, and this is a day that's going to go down in history for Warcry. I'm really excited. I'm kind of embarrassed at how excited I am. Warcry has never gotten a Metawatch before. We have only ever gotten one points update mid edition before. That was in first edition, basically right before second edition dropped, right before Adepticon. We got a brand new points update then. So this is really just the second big one ever. For those who don't know, there was a massive FAQ that dropped today, along with a Metawatch video that is incredible. People should definitely watch the whole thing. It's only 13 minutes, really easy. The highlights for me, I have a little section that I want to play for people, but when he actually talks about Warcry and the meta in general, something that I really loved is this is the second time I've heard John Bracken talk about Warcry, and it is the second time in which I've felt like reading between the lines of how he talks about it, that he at least has played Warcry the way we do in the competitive community. Um, and I think he also has clearly played it the way we do in the casual community. I use we for both because on the average month, I probably play about 4 competitive games, probably play about like 7 or 8 casual games, right? So I play more casual than I do competitive, but I still, obviously, I cover the competitive community and I play a lot of competitive Warcry. And so it's just really nice to see Bracken clearly being someone who knows that both communities exist. I think a big part of this happening is because in 2024, we've had already almost as many people entering Warcry tournaments as we had in the entirety of 2023. We're only 5 months into the year, and yet we've almost matched the total for 2023, which is really amazing. So clearly the game is getting popular enough at events to warrant this kind of attention. And I also think that some of this is because of the sort of dead game talk. I mean, I was actually in the midst of planning a video where I kind of talk about Dana Howell's video and Glass Half Dead's video and Uncle Adam's video, and talking about kind of the dead game speculation and talking about off meta musings response to those videos, stuff like that. Now I don't think I'm going to bother because I think they've clarified the future of the game here, and that's something that I want to just play for you right here to make everything really clear.
Exciting. State of Darkness players have lots of new fun stuff to play with. Great. And that's not all. There's more.
Big thing to read into
very
there.
Exciting. Yeah, it's great. Like the
but this is the part. This next question he's about to ask is huge.
Levels to that, like who you take and like the combinations that you can put together. It's really
absolutely. Yeah. So the options for Warcry are one of the things that people really enjoy right now. It's a lot of fun to be able to look at the list of things you can add to your warband and try and find neat little combos.
So this is huge because for anyone who's sort of speculated, I think a lot of people have said they see Warcry going to a more just like only type of solution the way Kill Team has. And this is very clear now that John understands that Warcry players love Warcry for the list building. Casual players like to express themselves through their list building. Competitive players like to optimize through their list building. And John clearly understands the importance of both of those, which I really love here. And also there was the little implication that Slaves to Darkness is getting more than what's just in the FAQ. I will show the FAQ in a moment, but this video is so momentous I had to cover this first.
One of the joys of the game, so to make sure that stays in place.
And finally, what's next for the studio? What have you guys got your sights set on next?
So in terms of like the long term for Warcry, what we want to do is we want to keep an eye on these points values. We want to keep an eye on the overall balance of the game, the overall integrity of it. We want to make sure that it's in a nice, healthy place for match play across the world, in addition to providing cool new narrative content wherever possible. And I'm thinking about the long term. What we really want to do is make sure that whenever new units get added into ranges, that we update those as quickly as we possibly can to make sure people have lots of cool new toys to play with in Warcry.
So 2 incredible things there to kind of check from that. The first is, the Seraphon model range was out for ages. And people were kept wondering, like, when is this ever going to get updated? This FAQ that just dropped has all the new Seraphon in it, which is very exciting. Some of it is pretty good. I think I think a few people are pretty excited about the agridons and what those are capable of, stuff like that. Uh, but what's huge here is he talked about, and also Slaves to Darkness is here, and they had been waiting a long time. He talked about a desire to get new models into the game as quickly as possible, which I love. I think is so important, and the community just really itches to see those in the game right away. And I also love that they're willing to just create an entire new profile when a model just gets an update that doesn't feel or look like the old one. Chaos Chosen already existed in the game and they sucked. So they got a new model that I think is 5 points more expensive, if I'm remembering right, maybe 10 points more expensive, but significantly more powerful. So that's good. And it's much more comparable to a Stormcast, which is what they should be. But then the second thing that he talked about, which I am so excited about, is very importantly that they're going to keep an eye. This isn't just the only Metawatch that's ever going to happen. I think that's incredible. There are things, I'm going to go over the FAQ in a moment, but there are things in the FAQ that did not get nerfed that I kind of think should be, kind of things in the space of what people are innovating with lately. But the cool thing is the main stuff at the top got taken down, and if the new stuff kind of gets to be at the top for 6 months and it seems crazy, we'll have actual balance updates to address it. So people will have time to play with their new toys. They're not just nerfing things into the ground before they've gotten to perform at tournaments, right? And then we can trust that if people prove the point at tournaments, that Johnny B will be here to save us and he will do something about it, which is incredible. This is a level of trust for the community that has just never existed. And, just on the eve of on the day after of the squatting of so many warbands, to see this kind of communication, this is essentially a sort of re-up on the idea that Warcry has a long future, which is very exciting. And I think can put to bed a lot of the rumors that, Warcry is kind of going to change beyond recognizability, right? The fact that he clearly likes the list building aspect, that he understands how the game is played. A lot of the first maybe 6 minutes of this video are him kind of just almost, the interviewer didn't know enough about the game to give him this test, but he essentially just runs through a test to prove that he knows how the game is played. That's kind of how I interpreted those first 6 minutes, using some language that I've always used, like chaff and titans, and showing that he understands how the interplay between those dynamic pieces works in game, which I think is just a really important sign for the future health of the game. So all of that gone. So all of that talked about already. Let's just talk real quick about the FAQ. There are too many abilities and changes here for me to cover all at once, but some really important ones. Let's see, where is it? Fight for Profit was nerfed slightly. It's still a very usable ability, and there are some very playable KO heroes. Especially, I think, like Engine Master. I think Aether Chemist is still very playable, but they are now going to be mostly buffing melee attack actions. You can still buff ranged attacks, but you have to be carrying treasure or on an objective. It's going to be much harder to do so. Seraphon are all in the game now. Everything new is in the game now. Some of it is quite strong. Like I said before, Agridons seem very interesting. The Raptidon, I'm very curious about whether this Raptidon Tactics ability is going to be any good. I'll probably pick up some Raptidons at some point, although I've got to figure out what my painting schedule is going to be, because there is a lot here that I want to be painting as a result of this FAQ. We also see just various abilities, some changes to Corvus Cabal, and one pretty massive buff for them that will show some just cool little changes to some fighters. Did I miss the ogre? No, I didn't. So the Code Right has a very funny ability. I think people should read themselves. The Lord of Hubris has a very cool ability where it just makes him an absolute chaff murderer. He's 4423, and it fits perfectly with the like flavor of him too. So he runs up to he's got so much hubris. He's like, you can attack me for free, and then I get to have crazy buffs to myself when I attack you back. But it's funny because like he's 420, right? You really only want him doing it against cheap stuff. So he's like kind of an arrogant coward, which is really funny and very Slanesh. I love that. So of course we've got the new Slaves to Darkness stuff, all the Ogroid Theridons, really big difference in terms of points cost for the big one with the Great Axe versus the one with the shield. I think toughness 6, 28 wounds is a very interesting place to be for only 210 points. That is a very affordable little profile there. So that's very interesting. Also, just very interesting new profiles for the Chaos Chosen, which I'm very excited about. A lot to like there, a lot to play with. I don't know. I'll have to run the numbers on, like efficiency, whether I think these can cut it in competitive play, but I'm very interested in them generally. Osiarch Bone Reapers gets a new fighter. Ogor Maw Tribes gets a sort of new fighter, and he's got a really cool pull ability. A few changes to some Gloomspite Gits, or maybe these were just models that I missed that have been there for a while, like Squig Boss on Nasha Squig. Either way, just like lots of profiles of various fighters that had been in the game for a while, just all making it in. A lot of them are very interesting. I will have a video that is sort of on the big winners and losers of this, because I'm just very excited about it. Now we get to points updates. Again, I will do an entire video on the winners and losers sort of with much more sort of rigor coming up next week, but there's a lot to be excited for, right? If you like some of the really struggling factions in the game, a lot of them got little updates. K-Knight Shadow Stalkers got some little buffs here. They're very little buffs, but a lot of the things that really prey on them got super nerfed, so that's kind of better. KO got some big buffs, but they didn't get removed from the game, right? Arcanauts from 50 only to 55, so there's still some of the premier chaff in the entire game. But with the huge nerf to Fight for Profit and the big nerfs to Thunderers, I think that they just wanted to be very careful with how hard they hit KO. Stormcast Eternals have been removed from Warcry. They are no longer a legal faction in the game. Seraphon are getting a few nice little buffs here because people have been complaining about skinks. And then Kixitaka, who had been played and people didn't really love the effect he was having on the game, gets a little 10-point nerf here. If you love Kixitaka, you can absolutely still play him, but just a little bit of a nerf to put him more in line with kind of the average power level in order. By the way, I don't actually think that Stormcast have been removed from the game, but I don't think that they're valid for competitive play anymore. Now, what you do see is I think it'll be possible to do some stuff with Warrior Chamber because the Paladins with the big long spears are still at the same points cost they were before, and they had an okay points cost that you could play. I also think Annihilator Prime with Grand Hammer escaped the nerf, and that's still an excellent ally. So if you love your Stormcast, some of the Stormcast are still really good allies. Calthea didn't get nerfed. There's a few things that didn't get nerfed that could have been given how debilitating some of these nerfs are. But it's just cool to see. It's cool to see that there's at least a few things that escaped. But as a competitive faction, Stormcast does not exist anymore. Hunters of Huanchi got a lot of little buffs. They are definitely going to be one of the big winners, so you no longer have to spam Huanchi's Claws. They, I think, are poised to be one of the 2 or 3 factions to beat going forward. We've also got a lot of changes, like Disciples of Zinj get their acolytes all buffed. Maggotkin of Nurgle are just like nerfed really hard here. I don't think they'll be unplayable. I think Plague Bearers at 60 make Nurgle bad, but they don't make them so bad that if Nurgle's your favorite faction, you can't even play them. Nurglings getting a 10 point. Oh, that hurts so bad. I was the only person playing Nurglings in my Nurgle Demons lists. Everyone else had abandoned them. I was trying to argue to everyone that the strongest way to play Nurgle Demons is to include some Nurglings. And apparently no one believed me except for Johnny B, which makes me a little happy and sad at the same time. Corvus Cabal just get that Shrike Talon minus 40 points. That's absolutely wild. I'm interested to see what that does for them. If anybody wants to do a 2 Shrike Talon list, something like that. Lots of little buffs for some of the bespoke factions. Some of them, mostly for the most part, are just not enough, but that's okay because so many of the top things are getting nerfed that if your faction wasn't touched, your faction got buffed. If your faction got buffed, your faction got super buffed because the top factions got hit so hard. For example, like Nighthaunt, Chainwraths went down to 70 points. Nighthaunt is a player now. With Chainwraths being that cheap and being able to just take 5 Chainwraths for 350 points to just like start a list with a lot of activations and then go from there is a really powerful option for Nighthaunt to have now that is going to make them a completely different faction to play against. But the sort of cheap chaff in Death has taken a big hit. OCR Bone Reapers are sort of 5 more points. Big points updates for like skeletons and zombies that are a lot harder to spam now. Soulblight lists will still probably often have a bazillion bodies, but it's just going to be a little bit harder. I think it's really nice to see like the Sons of Velmorn nerfed, for example. That was kind of just a weird grandfathered in issue. They also finally got the Elite Rune Mark, which means that resurrections work the same on the Sons of Velmorn that they do for everything else. Thank God. So I think, Soulblight lists that revolve around the exiled dead are still going to be really, really strong, but they're not going to be the same type of annoying and overpowering that they were before, which is really nice to see. We also see just a really big change to the core of how destruction works, with brute bosses being nerfed in a big way, not being nerfed to unplayability. 200 points, if you're interested in the brute boss with Boss Choppa, is still, it's a price you'd be willing to pay if you just really need that ability, but it's going to be more painful now. But the big thing is Brugit's up 20 points is wild. Prague up 15 is really funny. And then, of course, the Ogre leaders all going up 10, I think puts them into a place that I think is much healthier. I think, for example, Brugate Gutlord is now just going to cost you 30 more points than it did before, which I think is a really nice measured approach because it's going, like, that's about what it's worth, right? So just making it cost that extra 30 points is good. Making Quiv cost 15 more points is just going to make Hrothgorn just a little bit more painful to use, and also just having those cheap bodies. I was seeing people run Quiv where Hrothgorn wasn't even in their list, which was really funny. They also, I think I skipped over this, but they nerfed the FOMO Crusher 10 points. This is a really good measured nerf in that it needed to be nerfed, but it's not that good. 270 I think is exactly where it should land. Now there's like real reasons to take like the Mindstealer Sphere Ranks, for example. There's real reasons to take something like a Doom Bull or a Aviarch on disc or a Juggerlord, things like that. And so I think that's really good to see. I didn't see a Varengard nerf among the Chaos stuff, which surprised me because I think of Varengard and FOMO Crusher as like the two things that are good in Chaos for an ally. But Johnny B mentioned that Slaves to Darkness is going to see more changes coming up, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that entire faction get reworked. Something that he did say was that he wanted more reasons to take the Titan that is in your faction compared to just the most powerful Titan in your Grand Alliance. So this nerf specifically helps for that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that being like a general design change moving forward. For example, Cities of Sigmar have that Ogre Warhulk, and they have a lot of faction locked abilities. So there's lots of good reasons to take an Ogre Warhulk, but only in Cities of Sigmar. And actually, when you're in Cities of Sigmar, to focus on, I'm either going to take the big Horse Lord or I'm going to take the Warhulk, but I'm not necessarily interested in some of the other allies in order because of just how my in-faction synergies work. I think that that's a direction we're going to see them go in a little bit more often, which I think is really good and I think a really healthy thing. So overall, just a really incredible FAQ, something that honestly I never thought we would get. I had completely given up on this. I had basically given up all hope. I was starting to put materials together for a community FAQ because of this, and now we don't have to worry about that, which is incredible, incredible stuff. So I will be back with a detailed winners and losers next week for this update. And until then, may all of your rolls, I mean, every single one of your rolls be crits, and especially Johnny Bracken. I hope that all of John's rolls are crits from now until the next points update.